All right, the last thing is for us to do is to check for multiple conditions. And so for that, what we're going to do is I'm actually going to comment out the password checker v2. Actually, yeah, we'll comment that out. That doesn't make much sense. Okay. All right, so for the next one, what we'll do is actually take a look at the if-else statement. So we'll do else if statement. And for this one up here, I'm going to put a comment that says else statement. Okay. So for this one, what we're going to do is we'll set up a const, and we'll say ice cream. We're going to ask the user what their favorite ice cream is, and we're going to console log the different flavors. So actually, to make it faster, we can just do flavor. There we go. Okay, const flavor. And what we can do is we can do the same thing, prompt. What is your favorite flavor of ice cream? Okay, so we ask the person their favorite flavor, and we store that value in a const variable called flavor. And in this one, what we're going to do is we're going to do a series of if conditions. So if flavor equals chocolate. Okay, we can add in a condition here. Say console.log you like chocolate. Not really all that exciting, but we're just going to use this to test out our if-else statements here. I'm going to take this line and I'm going to copy it temporarily. All right, now normally what we'll do is we'll do an else statement here, and we'd say, I'll add that line back in there, delete that space. You like vanilla. Okay, well this doesn't really work because if flavor equals chocolate, you like chocolate. Otherwise, you like vanilla. That's not necessarily true, right? We don't just because you don't like chocolate doesn't mean that you like vanilla. Right? There might be other flavors. So how do we account for those other flavors? Well, what we could do is we could do what's called nested if statements. I'll show you that first. Okay, this first version. Okay, we could do something like this, where we take this and we actually do, I'm going to cut that out for a second, we do another if statement inside of that. Flavor equals vanilla. Console log, you like vanilla. And then at the end of that, we can do an else. Console.log, you like strawberry. Okay, so but we can see how ugly this starts to look really quickly. And what this is a nested if statement. Is an if statement built inside of another if statement. So here we have a check. Basically, it's like a series of sequential statements that are asked as a follow-up to the previous question. Okay. So here we have if flavor equals chocolate. We do a drop down. We see console log you like chocolate. But what happens if that's false? Well, false. It's going to go to the else statement here. It's going to go to option B. But option B is not really an option. It's another question. Okay. Well, do you like vanilla then? And say false. I do not like vanilla. All right. We'll skip that. Okay. Else you must like strawberry. So we either have chocolate, vanilla, strawberry. Well, this is fine. But what happens if we keep on adding in more statements? You can see how ugly, or you can probably predict how ugly this is going to get as we layer these down. We could have if statements pretty deep, and JavaScript does have a limit to how many if statements we can have within one another. But we can go for quite a while here. And it's going to get really hard to follow this logic under all the possible circumstances that you could possibly see with this type of question. So we're going to do a different version of it. This is pretty ugly. I'm going to copy this and then comment that out so we don't run it. and we're going to clean this up a bit. Instead of doing it as if else, nested all the way down, we're going to do it like we said above with our else if statement. The else if is going to offer you the ability to do another question. Else if, okay, and then we pass in a condition here. Let's get rid of that. Let's bring this up. Okay, so we're just going to do the next line. If flavor equals chocolate, else if flavor equals vanilla, and then we can do another one. It's going to yell at us. Oh, there we go. Bring that back. Else if, and we pass in a condition, flavor equals, there we go. Okay. If it equals strawberry, console log you like strawberry. And so we can go, let's see, we can keep going with this. Let's see what that one is. That's an extra one. There we go. Okay, so console log, if we format it, there we go. So if flavor equals chocolate, console log that. Else if flavor equals vanilla, console log that. Else if flavor equals strawberry, do this. Okay, and we can keep on going. We keep on adding. Else if flavor equals coffee. Okay, console.log. You like coffee. Now, what happens if we get down to the end? Do we end off with an else if? We can just end off with an else. Console.log. You don't like ice cream. There we go. So if flavor equals chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, coffee, we got them all. We can list off every single scenario that we have here. And this becomes very handy in, say, designing games, that we can say, we can provide them a list of options, and depending on what option they choose, we can send them down a certain path or branch in the game. Okay. We can also code AI with this, the enemy AI, and tell them, okay, if the player is crouching, do this. If the player moves, to the north, do this. If the player fires a weapon, do this. So this gives us the ability to independently code our programs to think for themselves and make their own decisions in runtime. And the only cost of doing these is that the computer is going to run these conditions. It's going to do checks on them as it goes. And this requires a little bit of computation in terms of its thinking, right? And you can write some fairly complex scenarios, but basic ones like these, I mean, you can write as many of these as you want, and the computer is going to process these no problem at all. Okay, even our things like our event checks for collisions, detecting collisions, okay, they're essentially just fancied up if statements. We do a check to see if a item has collided with another item, do something. Okay, this is the backbone of our programming and our games that we're going to be working with, and are very, very important going forward. We're almost nearing the point where we're ready to start building out our games. We had to cover a lot of the basics of JavaScript, and there's only a couple more things we need to cover. And my goal is that you're going to be able to use these things within the first couple of lessons. We're going to be using if statements to build out our program, and now that you know about else if, you have the ability to control your program. And this is the same as the above. It's just this is a very cleaner way of writing it. So that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed, and tomorrow we'll take a look at functions and how we can use those to create little mini programs inside of our games.